Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Mushroom Wonderland. It's springtime, it's warmed up, the mushrooms are starting to pop up everywhere, and we're gonna learn all about them, from a really deadly local one to a really delicious edible one, and even some hallucinogenic mushrooms on this episode of Mushroom Wonderland. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and come with me and my dog Gunner to discover what's growing out here in the spring of 2023.
Welcome to Mushroom Wonderland.
Over here, I see some mushrooms that are standing out pretty brightly. Kind of caramely orange colored caps. There we go. The funeral bell, Galerina marginata. So this is a really deadly local mushroom that actually contains amatoxins, just like the death cap. So Galerina marginata, you could tell it's got these kind of orange gills and this orange-brown spore print. It should have a bit of an annulus. You can see it right there where it broke away. And this caramel-colored mushroom sometimes could be confused for the genus Psilocybe. People looking for magic mushrooms really need to take warning about this mushroom, the Galerina marginata. Loves growing on dead wood, so it's a wood lover. And yeah, this contains amatoxins. They call it the skull cap or the funeral bell because a handful of these will kill a grown man. And unless you get a liver transplant in the right amount of time, there's no turning back once you get to a certain stage with these. So definitely one to be avoided, but interesting how a mushroom has so much toxicity. And we do have Amanita Panthera around here, but this is probably our most deadly native, the Galerina marginata. And really kind of interesting here. You see this little mushroom? Really kind of caramel colored cap. Well, there's a few more of them growing right here. Here's another little pin. I mean, just super tiny little pin. But there was a few that I picked, so we can have a look at a few different ages. So check out this guy. This is known as Psilocybe Deconica Montana. So a non-active Psilocybe in the subgenus Deconica. So these ones grow in the moss and they can come out in the spring. Look at these young pins, that caramel color, just so Psilocybe-like. Similar spore print and beautiful little mushrooms. Excited to find these growing here in the spring in Washington State. So one of our many Psilocybes, like decurrent gills, mottled gills. So you see the color, almost looks like a texture on those gills. That's called mottled gill, and some dark spores coming in. That's what's making them mottled looking. So these LBMs can be quite interesting. The genus Psilocybe was divided to a subgenus of Deconica, which are non-active species, so they don't contain psilocybin and psilocin, the active ingredients in other Psilocybe mushrooms. Look at the appendiculate margin on that middle-sized one. And as it gets older, very striate on the margin. And when it's young, just really caramel color. Like a pin of most Psilocybe mushrooms looks something like that. Real flocco stipe, which also Galerina can do that too. But anyways, Psilocybe Montana or Deconica Montana. How cool to find these in the wild. Look at this insane mushroom growing out of this sandy hillside right here on this trail where it's kind of washed out. This one, a false morel. So some people call, you know, half freeze or verpas false morels, but this is in the genus Gyromitra, and these guys are true false morels. So we call them brain mushrooms too. Look how that thing looks. So this is in the Gyromitra genus. Gyromitra esculenta is kind of a good generic name for this. It's actually like a clade of mushrooms, like a group of mushrooms. So these ones are probably different from the Gyromitra esculenta that comes from Europe that was originally described, but nevertheless containing quite a bit of toxins. There's been deaths attributed to these mushrooms, and so quite a poisonous one that grows here in the wild. We're seeing some real poisonous mushrooms popping up this time of year. Gyromitra esculenta, when eaten, will have a reaction in your gut that turns the gyromitrin in this mushroom into monomethylhydrazine, which is a rocket fuel in your belly. They actually propelled rockets in World War II with hydrazine, and so any of these hydrazine containing mushrooms can be quite poisonous. Now there's ways to detoxify it supposedly. I think it's probably best just to leave this one alone. It's pretty distinct. I don't think it's easy to confuse it with a morel. Morels have real holes and pits, where this doesn't have any holes, you know. It's just a lumpy, twisted, kind of contorted surface, but there's no actual holes or craters here. It's all, you know. And then inside, you see it's this crazy, this is what's called an ascomite, just like a morel. They grow their spores in tiny little tubes. But the Gyromitra esculenta clade, these ones here, definitely leave these behind. They're cool to look at, but they're not really good for eating. So, but a common spring mushroom that grows here, Gyromitra esculenta. Check this guy out. Beautiful. Morchella brunea. This is the cottonwood associating natural morel you can find here in Western Washington. It's a beautiful example of one. Perfect age, perfect size. As you can see, very, very nice morel. So the brunea is the cottonwood associate morel that grows around here. So these are some of the best eating. And something catches my eye over there, and I think this is kind of an exciting one for a lot of you. There's a little one that's been chewed up by some bugs, but look at it right here, in much better condition. Ooh, that one looks pretty familiar, right? It's kind of got them white spots on it, but this one's brown, so not quite exactly like the Mario mushroom. This one's pretty close. Oh, it's a chunk of carpet, I guess. This one, Amanita Panthera, or the panther cap. This is the northwest variety. So these mushrooms are closely related to Amanita muscaria, or the really iconic red mushroom with the white spots on top. And so this one, being closely related, has a lot of the same toxins and chemicals that put this in a class of mushrooms near hallucinogenic, but more like a deliriant. So it contains some muscimol and iobotanic acid, which work together to give you some psychotropic effects. Also contains something called muscarine, which can be pretty toxic. I've never tried them myself. Paul Stamets has a video where he talks about using these and just having like a super crazy trip. You can look that up. But the Amanita Panthera, one of the spring amanitas that grow here, and coming out in mid-April. And it's always a beautiful one to find. So I'm gonna leave this here to grow up and mature. Hopefully it gets wet enough to where it can really spread open and spread a lot of spores. But Amanita Panthera, handsome, beautiful mushroom. So this is super cool. Back here at this spot that I've came to the past couple of years. And look at this, Gymnopilus Ludiopholius. So these guys are mildly psychoactive. One of the species of mushrooms that are affectionately known as magic mushrooms that grow here in the PNW. Here's what the babies look like. These are the buttons or the pins, and they're very like purplish. They have almost like scales on top of the cap. As they get a little bit older and bigger, they start to turn yellowish colored. Look at all these Psilocybe cups right here too. An ascomite related to Morels and such. But these guys are so pretty. Let me show you the underneath of one of these. There we go. Very rhizomorphic, and look at the gills there. Very bright yellow. Purplish cap. They drop these orange spores that are so bright and pretty. One of the most photogenic mushrooms in my book. The Gymnopilus or Gymnopilus Ludiofolius. Saprotrophic, eating on wood chips and wood debris, logs. I've seen them grow on the side of a deck railing before. I did a video with Alan Rockefeller about this particular mushroom a couple years ago. So you can go check that one out. But beautiful spring mushroom, one of the few hallucinogenic mushrooms that grow in the spring. Growing right here in Western Washington outdoors. Gymnopilus Ludiopholius. So right here we have a pretty common spring mushroom. These things have been popping up for a couple of months now. See that kind of striate cap, meaning all those lines on it. Those are actually the gills kind of showing through. They get this wavy look on the cap, and they flatten out pretty good as they get older. As we pluck one of these guys up, underneath, if you were to take a spore print or just look closely, you'd see that it has pink spores. So this is in the genus Entoloma. Entoloma holoconoideum. So no good for eating. Most places that I've read talks about it being unknown. So I don't know. There's quite a huge flush of them out this year. But I think Entoloma, not really a genus that is popular for eating. There is like the shrimp of the woods or whatever, but we don't have those around here. But these guys, saprobes growing in the moss, really, really common. Entoloma holoconoideum. These were described in like just the 1970s. So they're one of these boring mushrooms that like people tend to overlook, but there's a lot of them out here. So in case you were wondering, not really useful to humans so far as we know. So there's a few small mushrooms growing right down here. This is another one of the pink gills that grows here in spring. This one not as dark on the top of the cap. If I can focus, there we go. This one known as Entoloma citratum, or the honey pink gill. So another one of these pink spored. You can see the striate cap, a little dark right in the disc. But definitely not as dark or as pointy or umbonate as the holoconoideum. So a little bit different, but basically should be treated the same. It's just one of these little moss-loving, cold-tolerant mushrooms that grow in the conifer forest of the PNW in the spring. Not known to be an edible Actually, probably best to be avoided from a genus of mushrooms. Not really known for being good edibles, especially here in the PNW. But this one, the gills aren't attached to the stipe. It will have a pink spore deposit, and it's this honey color. That's how it gets that common name, the honey pink gill, Entoloma cetratum. So right here is an example of the holoconoidium, more brown, kind of a metallic sheen to the cap, a very undulate cap, pink gills, or pink spores anyways. And right up here, the Entoloma cetratum, the honey pink gill. So two different mushrooms. They both have that kind of shimmery look to the top of the cap. Different morphology. So the honey pink gill, Entoloma cetratum, and the Nolanea holoconoidium, which are really, really common here. Check out this thing hanging off of this log. This is crazy huge. Gyromitra infula. Look at that, kind of a rare Gyromitra. I don't see these quite as much. Look at how big that sucker is. So related to Gyromitra esculenta, this one more common in the spring around here. Cool mushroom, wow. So it's got a unique, like two-pointed cap, I guess you'd call that. And big ascomite. Whew, this one's stinky. It's a little past its prime. But also good to avoid this one, just like you should the Gyromitra esculenta. I know there's debate about that, and people will probably chime in the comments. But Gyromitra infula, Gyromitra esculenta clade, probably safe to avoid. So we stumble across these interesting looking mushrooms. Kind of feel a little bit like a morel. But look at the stipe on this. Let me set it down so we can get that focus. These ones are Helvella. Helvella vespertina lacunosa group. So ascomite, kind of like morels, but no good for eating. These ones are especially really old, but very unique looking. Another one back there. Last year we found a bunch of morels growing right here. This year, all I'm seeing so far is the Helvella lacunosa, or it's vespertina here on the west coast. Growing right here on the side of the trail. Beautiful kind of pancake golden brown color. And look at those gills. Wow. Pretty much decurrent. They're very much attached to the stipe. No sign of an annulus. And look how widely spaced those gills are. So I would think waxy cap, and I think I'd be right. This is Cuphophilus, pritensis. This is the Meadow Wax Cap, even though not very waxy for a wax cap. These were actually kind of a popular edible in Europe. Actually even collect and sell them commercially, but Cuphophilus, sort of rare here in Western Washington. So in the Hygrophoriaceae, so related to the other wax caps, really broad, wide gills, you see that? And then they run down the stipe a little bit, somewhat like a chanterelle, but totally different mushroom here, growing in the spring, saprobe, growing under a big leaf maple tree. So the Hygrophoriaceae, a bunch of beautiful mushrooms, really photogenic mushrooms. This one maybe not as pretty to take a picture of, but a good one to slice up and throw in your omelet or something. I'm gonna leave it behind though. Cuphophilus or Cuphophilus pritensis, the Meadow Wax Cap. make sure to hit subscribe and then hit that notification bell so you can get notified when new videos drop here on Mushroom Wonderland. You can also find Mushroom Wonderland on Patreon, and over there are some videos that wouldn't be allowed on YouTube. More mushroom videos about psychedelic mushrooms and psilocybin mushrooms. So go over there to check those videos out. And if you want to just help support what I do, you can just subscribe for $5 on Patreon, and it helps me to just keep doing what I'm doing. So thank you so much for joining us on this video, this little update video. Make sure to tune in for future videos, and much love, everyone. Peace out.